Ha, how's everybody today? It's Thursday, March 7th. This is my live coaching for traders or anybody who wants some support on this journey that we all are on. I would love to take on any questions or challenge that you guys may want to put forward. The chat box, you can do this, hopefully, if everything's working as it should, via YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Hopefully it's working. If it isn't, you can let me know, but there's probably not much I can do about it. Anyway, hope everybody's having a good week. I know it's been volatile out there, so I'm hoping that you're taking really good care of yourselves. I couldn't do yesterday. I usually do this on Wednesday. My name is Kim Ann Curtin, the Wall Street Coach. Usually I do this almost every Wednesday, but this week it's Thursday, and better to do it than not do it at all. So really love to have this be driven by you guys and what you want me to focus on. But of course, I try to come to the conversation, with some thoughts and things that I can hopefully share with you that I've, either been inspired by or that is assisting me on the journey. And one of the things I really want to bring attention to this week is my guest, Maggie Jackson. She's going to be on Twitter X Space tomorrow at, what time is that happening? Good Lord, I'm trying to remember the time of our space tomorrow. I'll get that for you guys here in a minute. I just have to go look it up. But she wrote a book that has just rocked my world called Uncertain: The Wisdom and Wonder of Being Unsure. And I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, so tomorrow at 3:20 Eastern, she and I are going to be on X to do a space. And why am I telling you about this, guys? Because ultimately, what you're going to discover if you read the book or if you, at a minimum, listen to Maggie, what you're going to find out is that this concept of being uncertain, being in this place of not sure what happens to us and our brains. And she speaks about so many different scientific kind of, experiences and experiments where this has been proven. What happens is our brain actually goes into high gear. And one of the things that I think happens for a lot of traders is that often traders are coming from another, workplace or work ethic or corporate culture or academic culture. And this concept of being unsure is an anathema to them, is the antithesis of what they think trading it requires. And I think that can create a lot of stumbles and fumbles for traders because they have yet to get comfortable sitting in ambiguity. And even more so, when the trade doesn't go as they thought it would, they take it very personally. They take it like an affront that they are wrong. And what I've noticed, having coached now for over 17 years, is that is often an indicator that trader, that person has collapsed their sense of identity with being right, with being wrong. And that is such a costly thing to do as a trader, because if you do that, you are going to be wrong so many times, and you're going to take a hit, right? Your ability to come back from not only making a mistake, but then shaming yourself for that mistake is going to just cost you exponentially. So part of why I really would love to see traders read Maggie's book, Uncertain, is because she talks about how cognitively we can actually benefit by embracing uncertainty. Now, believe me, I get it. As a trader, I don't want you, I never would be advocating you take trades you're uncertain about. But listen to this concept I'm trying to say here. When you are completely in this place of being just very black and white, I suspect what's happening is it prevents you from being able to see the big picture. And I think this is part of what this book really just helped me open my own eyes to. I want to get an image of it here. That's what I'm doing. So here is the book. This is, it just came out a couple of weeks ago. Here it is, guys. So it's backwards. That's okay. Uncertain, the wisdom and wonder of being unsure. And a lot of what Maggie talks about is what happens to us. Also, she speaks to that the collective we are with, the people we associate with, the people we potentially are trading with, the trading rooms, right? Part of what she also noticed about uncertainty is that there was research done on juries who are in the middle of determining the case's fate. And what she noticed is, or this, lab results noticed, and she speaks about, is that when there was diversity in these jury pool rooms, they spent more time cognitively being able to see different aspects of the case. So how does this apply to traders? It applies in this way. It applies in the sense that often all of us are comfortable, usually with people that are similar to us. Often what happens, and especially with traders, you're going to probably, if you're lucky enough to have a tribe, if you're lucky enough to have a little cohort, you're going to find most times that collective thinks the same way, sees things the same way. Hopefully, what I'm encouraging here is that they're probably likely in any of those collectives, there's probably the odd duck. There's probably somebody who pushes back, who doesn't see it the way you see it, or the majority sees it. And what I want to say is that you guys and your tribe rooms, your little chat rooms, are better off for it. Why? Because that is bringing in diversity of thought, especially somebody who probably ticks you off, but probably somebody who, you're like, why are you looking at it that way? What is this person thinking? That is actually helping your own brain work better. It helps you be able to step into that and be like, cognitively, you're kind of like, why would this guy be thinking that way? What would be going on for him to even come up with that? Regardless of the judgments you have about them, what that does, thanks to what Mackie speaks to in the book, is it's sharpening your own cognitive ability. It's having you be even more double, triple checking that the way you think is accurate. Well, if he's saying that, am I correct? It forces our brain to actually go into due diligence, make sure, is this true? Is this not true? And that is why she is, ultimately trying to say for all of us, stepping into ambiguity, stepping into uncertainty, not 24/7, guys. That's not what she's saying, but being able to step into that place where we are not in the I have to be right, I have to be wrong. Being able to embrace that is actually going to help you work better, help you become more productive in the long run. This is the other thing that I want to say specifically about this book and why I like it so much. I literally wrote, I think I may have told you guys, 22 emails to former clients and to friends and colleagues to advocate that they all get this book, because it's absolutely, I printed up on, I got this book on a Kindle. I have never printed up more notes from my Kindle than this book. I'm not kidding you guys. I have over 300 highlights. Check this out. Look at how many pages I have. This is like 40 pages of notes from this book. This book is unbelievable. Yes. Hi, real Javier. I'm so glad you're here. Like Joe Dispenza says, in the uncertain is everything you want. Wow, I did not ever hear him say that, but it's so perfect. Oh, in the unknown, yes, but it's the same, right? What is the unknown? The unknown is the uncertain. So this is the other thing that I think is really important, especially for traders, to take from this book. There is this incredible part of the book where she talks specifically, interviews a bunch of experts on childhood, specifically traumatic childhoods, specifically challenging childhoods. Those kids who have grown up in poverty, those kids who had no home, those kids who've been to hell and back a bunch of times over. And one of the things that she acknowledges is how often the studies that are referenced about children that go through that, having lived through a lot of that myself, I can tell you that there is a bit of a stigma in the personal development world, or the child, people who work with children who say, that kind of a childhood is going to leave marks. And there's a bit of a stigma to that, as if, the one particular case she references, it's called the marshmallow test. And I'm sure everybody here has seen it, where the kid is, at a very young age, the marshmallow is put in front of the child and they're told to not eat the marshmallow. And then they're left, for a long time for a kid. And they watch to see, can the kid, withstand the temptation? And there's, that study, kind of made you feel like the kids who couldn't wait to eat the marshmallow and finally shoves it into their mouth. Like, they kind of make you feel like that test was like, oh, they're totally screwed for their future, and that's like a hard thing to overcome when you hear that about those kids. But this one particular man who was just very shaken by that and had his own difficult childhood was like, I don't believe that that's true. And what he basically speaks about in her book is that he feels that the kids who actually don't hold out for that marshmallow, he said, are operating with wisdom. Listen to why. Because they have already learned, based on the lifetime of hell they've lived through, that marshmallow, it probably won't even still be there if they wait until that person comes back. So what that particular gentleman is trying to imply is that those kids who don't wait it out are actually street smart, are actually so super aware that their environment and their stability is not guaranteed. So that is also one of the more powerful, stories in this book, because I feel that there are so many people who have had challenges or who judge themselves based on what they've been through in the past, or who perhaps don't feel they have the kind of discipline, I won't mention any names, but some of those gurus are advocating, or they don't have like this sort of, ability to, check a box of all the things they're supposed to do every day. I feel so many times the people who have that challenge are judging themselves, making themselves feel bad or ashamed, or like you're broken. And what I feel so many of the different stories in this book do is allow you to see that you're not broken, but that you have adapted based on the environments you come from. And this is why it's so important, in my opinion, traders, for those of you who have come from any kind of challenge, and even those who haven't, you have to be self-aware when you go into trading. You have to really become aware of how you tick, because how you tick, how you respond or react to loss in your life, to money, to scarcity, to abundance, to your how you see yourself in front of other people. All of these are going to show up in your trading. And if you don't have the awareness going in, it's going to potentially cost you more. And that's ultimately what I wanted to try to do, is give you guys tools so that it doesn't cost your capital and it doesn't cost your mental capital, never mind your financial capital. All right, so the real Javier says, talk about turning conventional wisdom on its head, right? That's what I think. I was so excited about that section alone. I could have put the book down, but every damn chapter, I was just like, what? Like, I was just flipping out. Eric says, guilt trips psychologically can mess with anyone's mind. I think more than it's like a guilt trip. I think what's really here is that a lot of our capacity to deal with whatever shit we've gone through is so much more potent, so much more powerful than any of us have been led to believe. And this, I'm going to tell you guys right now, is the reason why I became a coach. I asked for my first therapist at 10 years old. Early on in the family of origin I come from, I was very clear I had to get me some tools to navigate it successfully. So I was like, I better get some help. And having done lots of therapy, and I have nothing against therapy, and I have to say, when I hired a coach, which is why I became a coach over 20 years ago, I was profoundly touched by how that coach saw me. And one of the things that I learned through her coaching was through this particular style of coach that I've become trained in, which is called the coactive coach. That's the kind of coach I am. And their mantra is this. This is how I hold every client. And if I can't hold the client this way, I won't take the client on. Here is how we are taught to receive everybody. That you are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. WHOLE. That person isn't broken, that even if there's costly behaviors, even if there's costly things that are self-sabotaging you, at one point in your life, it helped save your ass. At one point in your life, it served you. And that was a paradigm shift for me, because I had come from so much, chaos, that I thought all along, well, I'm broken. I must have something wrong with me, that this happens, that I see myself this way, or so on and so forth. And when I got to that coach 20 years ago, everything shifted for me. The doors blew off, because I realized, wait a minute, every single thing that I potentially have learned and or am doing now, if I realize, like, wow, that served me once, but perhaps now it doesn't, it's a lot easier to put that down without the self-judgment, without the, making myself wrong for X, Y, and Z. And that's ultimately what I want you guys to see. What if that is true for you? Even the costly things that you do in your trading account, even for the things that after, doing it over and over and over again, you're still doing it. Instead of getting angry at yourself, I want you to get curious. I want you to look for what and how could this particular costly behavior have saved my ass once? What and how did I live in the past? Maybe it was in your childhood, maybe it was another point in your life, but someplace along the line, that operating model was necessary. Just like our phones have an operating system that updates, like, what is it, every couple of months now? It practically feels like, maybe even more than that. Like, are we going to make the previous operating system wrong? No, that's why they do new ones, because there's something else to put out there. That's what I want you to think about yourself. If you guys have an old operating model, old operating system, then don't make it wrong. That was what you had access to at the time. But if you know it's costing you now, just like with an operating system, like I put mine off usually for weeks, because I'm like, oh, I don't have time to shut the whole phone down, right? Whatever the excuses that I come up with. But I'm going to pay a price if I don't update my system. And the same is true for each of us. All right, so the real Javier says, I love your channel because it has a lot in common with my channel and philosophy. I was blown away by your interviews with Jason Apollo Fox. That was such a good interview. If you guys haven't seen it, thank you, Javier, for your kind words. I recommend that conversation strongly. He is just such a genius, Jason, a big heart, a very spiritual, soulful man who is an incredible intellect. I love the combo of, and his book, The Intuitive Investor, I can't recommend enough. Javier, he was working at the CFA Institute when I got to interview him. He's in my book, Transforming Wall Street, which, by the way, guys, I'm going to grab it off the shelf here. This is my book, Transforming Wall Street. Jason Apollo is one of the 50 Wall Streeters that I feature in my book, but it is 9th anniversary is next week. It came out this 9 years ago, unbelievably. So just a little shout out to my book, and Jason is one of the 50 in there. Javier, you have another question here. I was wondering if I could have you on my channel for an interview. Of course, Javier, who said no? Thank you so much for inviting me. That's very nice of you. Thank you. Oh my God, I can't believe you read the book for the past 10 years. Thank you so much for reading my book. Not many people have, Javier. I have to be honest with you. So I'm really, really glad that you've read it, and thank you for reading it. It was, definitely a difficult thing to do. And that was the other topic too that I wanted to speak to today, just about how hard sometimes things are, and especially traders know this. But before I go down that path, I'm just going to kind of put a pin in this conversation about uncertain, and also just to remind everybody here, I do these mostly on Wednesday, but we have 73 people in the room. So now I'm like, maybe I should do these on Thursday instead. If you guys prefer Thursday instead of Wednesday, let me know, because we have a lot of people in the room, and I'm really happy that everybody's here. But ultimately, these are in service to you. So if anybody has something they want coaching on, if anybody has a challenge, if anybody wants to share pain or difficulty they've gone through this week, this is the place to do it. Please put it in the chat box. This is ultimately in service to you guys. I come with topics to talk about in case nobody puts questions in the chat box, but ultimately I want to try to really coach you guys. Just, and if you feel like you don't want to be too forthright with what you're going through, you can speak to it in subtle ways in the chat box. Whatever it takes, guys, just be sure that you get what you need from this conversation today, because that's why I do them. What else did I want to say about that? Oh, just that I have Maggie tomorrow on at 3:20 Eastern, the author of Uncertain, and I would love you guys to come to that if you're around or available. I know, it's still during market hours, but I thought it was late enough in the day, hopefully to, be able to be a contribution to you guys. So, okay, here is the other thing that I just want to speak to, and it sort of is, centered around my book, and part of what I'm putting in Curtin Call. Curtin Call is my newsletter, guys. If you haven't signed up for that, I'm going to suggest you do. If you guys want to get a copy of my 5 practices, which are what are addressed in the book, my book, I would recommend you get that. If you like anything I have to say, it's those 5 practices, and you can get them by signing up there. I just put the link in the chat box for the 5practices.com. And those 5 practices are what I discovered after interviewing what I call the Wall Street 50 men and women who found success in Wall Street, on Wall Street, in finance, and ultimately consciousness that I felt were operating from a place of consciousness. Javier, if you send me a DM on Twitter, on X, that would be awesome. And then we can coordinate there. And I'll give you my email in the DMs on X, and then we can coordinate. So thank you so much for inviting me on. All right, so what I wanted to speak about with reference to the book, right? So the book came out 9 years ago, and one of the things that I struggled with, especially when I first decided to write this book, I did some incredible interviews. I interviewed Bill Ackman. I interviewed Henry Kaufman. I interviewed, John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. I interviewed Jim Rogers. I interviewed Fred Wilson. Jack Schwaker. Like, guys, like, I was interviewing like these legends, and I was absolutely terrified, petrified. And as I talk often with you guys about the inner gremlins, the inner saboteurs, this is a big part of it. What I want you guys to really get is, like, I was inundated with those inner saboteurs. Thank you so much, Javier. You just keep giving me such nice compliments. And for some reason, the chat box is a little tricky. So let me just try to change it. Is that showing? I don't know what I've done here. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. So at the end of the day, I just want to speak to how these gremlins were just a choir of noise in my head. I was constantly kind of coming from this place of thinking, the inner gremlins. Oh, that's just so nice. The spiritual counterpart to market wizards. I couldn't read it before, Javier. That is just like the nicest thing you could say. Thank you so much for saying that. It means so much to me. So anyway, I don't know what I've done, but somehow I'm like, highlighting your remarks, and I don't know how I'm doing that. But here's what I want to say, guys, especially if you're traders or you've taken on anything really hard in your life. At that time, the choir in my head was telling me I didn't know what I was doing. Now, if you're a trader who's been trading for less than 5 years, maybe even less than a decade, you probably are still hearing that voice or voices too that tell you you don't know what you're doing. And all I want to say to you guys is that I didn't know what I was doing. And guess how I learned? By doing it. And that's what I want to say to everybody here. Whoever has to listen to their inner critic or inner saboteur, tell them you don't know what you're doing. You know how you figure out what you're doing? By doing. It's not like you can look at the water and say, I will figure out how to swim. No, you have to get into the water, guys, to learn how to swim. That is the key. So if you know there's stuff left for you to learn as a trader, then go freaking learn it. But don't pull yourself out of a situation just because you don't have it mastered. You only get to mastery. You only get to up-level yourself if you're in the game, if you're out there taking risks, taking the hits. And one of the things I speak about in Curtin Call, which is my weekly newsletter, which if you haven't signed up for it, I really hope you will. But that ultimately, what's the heart of what I talk about in that? I talk about how that all the embarrassing things that I went through as I wrote that book, and I talk at length about that in the newsletter that comes out tomorrow. My hands were shaking so bad when I interviewed Bill Ackman. I couldn't even turn on my recording device because I was shaking in my shoes. I got lost on the way to John Bogle, Vanguard's corporate office. It was a 4-hour drive for me to get to his office. On the 4th of July, John Bogle, who was in his 90s at the time, was working on the 4th of July. And that was the day he said I could come and interview him. So I had to take a 4-hour road trip to get to him in Philly to interview him. And I got lost. And at one point, there was like road work. Like, it was just such a clusterfuck of chaos that day trying to get to him. And now I was panic stricken. I was going to be late. You're not late to like the man who started Vanguard in his 90s on a holiday. So by one point, a police officer was like trying to help with the traffic, whatever. And I got to him and I just went hysterical. I just started crying because I was like, I'm going to be late for this legend. And he just somehow emotionally slapped me across the face and was like, get your shit together, girl. Like, this is how you're going to get there. Like, he was like a guardian angel that day who helped me come back to center. He was like, this is how you get there. This is how you go there. Like, you can do this. Don't be a wuss. Like, you've got this. And that man, who I still remember, he's on the Jersey Police Force, Officer Lancelotti. I remember it because it was like Sir Lancelot, right? Officer Lancelotti helped me come back to center that day in the middle of my breakdown. There were things like that, guys, left and right happening to me. Jack Schwager, I met him at his apartment building in New York City on the Upper West Side. And there was this communal rooftop kind of like, area where residents of that building, could have, time with people. It was like a big common area, an outdoor area on the roof, this beautiful, beautiful apartment building. And you know what I did for the first half hour with Jack Schwager? Because, his Mark Wizard books, that's why Javier, your message means so much to me. Of course, had inspired me. They were so incredible. I gushed like a schoolgirl with Jack Schwager, guys, for like way too long. Like, I was at the like a fangirl like level. And then finally he's like, well, don't you want to interview me? Because I was just like talking nonstop because I was so nervous, right? So what did I do to survive all of these, silly fumbles? Is I said, so what? That's what my magic mantra was. Every mistake I made, every stupid, action I took, every time I got nervous with somebody very famous, Jim Rogers, like the legend Jim Rogers, I was so nervous. My mouth was so dry. I couldn't talk. I had to interrupt the interview and ask him to get me water because I couldn't get my questions out because everything had just dried up in me because I was so scared that I was going to look like an idiot, which I did. But over and over again, what did I say? So what? And that gave me the ability to get up the next day and go do it again. So that is the mantra that I hope all of you will walk away with. You guys have a bad day. You have a red day. You make a mistake. So what? That I want to be your new mantra. Adrian says you could have interviewed Jeff Epstein when you met him. Oh my God. I didn't meet him, Adrian. Thank God I didn't meet him. Oh my God. I wasn't in the headspace of interviewing back then. But yeah, Jeff Epstein. If you guys don't know about my almost encounter with Jeff Epstein, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch how that almost went down. I was in the Virgin Islands, outside of his island, and one of the women on the sailboat, we were on a sailboat near his island. This is 25 years ago. And, this woman was like, oh, we should hook you up with Jeffrey Epstein. Because he was a man about town in New York City back then. He was the, bachelor of bachelors, like, all the damn New York Post and all those damn New York magazines, New York, they had all featured him. They all prominently positioned him as, this handsome financier who was a bachelor. Like, oh my God. And anyway, long story short, we're outside of his island, and this gal who was on the boat with me, she was calling him, Jeffrey, come meet Kim. Oh my God. Can you imagine if he ever come? Jesus. That just goes to tell you, like, sometimes, Adrian, there are angels looking out for us. And that day I had definitely quite a few. So yes, Javier, I have rubbed elbows with a few high-profile Wall Street people. Look, I've been in finance now, guys. I mean, geez, Louise, let's see, 17 years, 18 years as a coach. And before that, 10, so that's almost 28 years in finance. I started at a bank trade association, and then I was in 2 different hedge funds before I started the coaching practice, the Wall Street Coach. And that Wall Street Coach practice all began because of what happened to me in my coaching. So I was working the hedge funds. Obviously I was doing well financially, and I was having to do a lot of things that were very strategic, which I am a very strategic kind of person. However, I wasn't really satisfied. I wasn't really happy. And early in my 20s, Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, had a huge impact on me. And he talked at length about finding your bliss. And I was like really gung-ho to find that. But, after about 20 years looking for the bliss and not finding it, I thought, well, just make some money at least and try to use my skill sets, which I was doing. But then I had the opportunity to work with a coactive coach, which is the kind of coach I'm certified as. And that coaching was absolutely life-changing for me. And it was so life-changing that I knew I was being called to become a coach. And I can tell you guys, walking away, the hedge fund that I worked at, nobody walked away from. You just didn't, because it was so hard to get into that fund. Like once you were in, it was kind of like the position that you stay in for a lifetime. So it was very unconventional for me to leave. And I can remember some very, people very close to me who loved me very much were very worried about my decision and definitely giving me, a hard time about making that choice. But I knew in my heart that that's what I had to do. And look, at the end of the day, when I advocate that you guys listen to your hearts, I'm never going to be somebody who advocates being reckless or irresponsible. And I was in a position to take that kind of risk. Nobody was dependent on me. I was in a position, at least financially at that time, to be able to take that sort of risk. Now, that isn't always the case with everybody. And so you guys have to be the ones who are the stewards of what your life looks like. When I advocate that you use that phrase, so what? There could be people here who are listening who do have people that are dependent on them, be it a partner, be it kids, be it elderly parents. Nobody can make these decisions for each of us but ourselves. And all you can do is take in the information and then determine what is going to suit you, and also your risk tolerance based on what you have to be responsible to. And that nobody can do for us. We have to take ownership of that. So again, just a reminder that these are in service to coaching you guys. If there's anything you guys want to speak to here that you're challenged with, that you're struggling with, if you feel you have some kind of, emotional block that you want to kind of get to the bottom of, please put that in the chat notes now. The other thing too that I'm going to ask, we have 84 people now in the room. If and only if you guys are comfortable doing this, I would really like to start this practice. I brought it up last week, where you brag. I want to have everybody get comfortable bragging, saying something about themselves that they're proud of, something that they're really glad that they took on and that they did well at it. One of the things I see a lot is that in today's kind of culture and environment, people don't like to, brag. They don't like to say something that they did well. It's like, we're rewarded in public if we talk about the things we don't do well. We're, made to feel like a hero if we talk about, the places we screw up. But I really want everybody here to get more comfortable with bragging. Look, you can't brag with everybody because some people will get jealous. Some people will get threatened by it. Some people are coming from a zero-sum game. That's the game they're playing, where if you get something, that means they don't get something. That is not how I'm built. So at least in this forum, if you come to these weekly live coaching, this is a place where I want you to brag. I want you to speak up about something you did great this week, because I want you to start to be able to see what you do well. Appreciative inquiry is a particular technique that I've been a fan of for over 18 years. And this is a technique that has you start to focus on what you do well, what do you do right, what have you succeeded at, instead of constantly looking at what you don't do well, instead of constantly putting your focus on what's wrong. You want to switch that mindset up. You want to start to really ask yourself, like, oh, how and where could it be that I have done things well this week? Why is that important? Because it shifts your consciousness. It shifts your mindset to a very different place. When you're always looking for what you did wrong, you're going to find it. But if you begin to look for what you've done right, what you've done well, where you show discipline, it's going to open up your lens in a whole nother way. All right, so I'm going to put a link here for you guys to sign up for Curtin Call, which is my weekly newsletter, if you aren't already signed up for it. The other thing too that I want to just speak to is we have an acceleration course for traders that lasts 6 weeks. The next one starts, I'm just looking, guys, at my date for that next one is going to be 4/18. That is when the next one launches. If you guys want to sign up for that, I'll put that link also in the chat box. That is my next one, and it's specifically for traders, and it's going to be a small group. And I think you guys will get a lot out of it. We've done how many so far? I'm kind of losing count. And they've gone really well. And the traders who participated in it have said they've gotten a lot out of it. So I hope you guys will consider it. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box. Does anybody want anything they want coaching on? Please put that in there now. So back to this concept of so what I want you guys to be able to start to practice for yourselves is that when you make a mistake, when you notice that you've done something that potentially costs your trading account or costs your mental capital, what I want you to do with that concept of so what is to see what it takes for you to get into neutrality. One of the things that I think is very hard for traders is to live in this state of neutrality. I think it's very tempting for a lot of traders to go into judgment. And that is, in my experience, usually an inner saboteur or an inner gremlin that has a whole bunch of judgment already pre-baked in its commentary. So one of the books that I've advocated and talked about a lot, and in fact, on my podcast, you'll see an interview that I did with Rick Carson. He is the author of Taming Your Gremlin. I think this is one thing very few traders spend enough time on, and that is identifying what these inner critics, inner gremlins, inner saboteurs are saying to them. Because if you are listening to their monologue all the time inside, what's happening is, first of all, it's hijacking your own inner voice. If you have an inner voice or voices that say things like would, should, or could, or makes you feel bad about yourself, you guys are listening to your inner gremlin. And ultimately, what I want is for you guys to not listen to your inner gremlin, but to listen to your own inner voice. All right, so Eric says, I had bad timing, so what I missed a trade. Do what? Learning to let go and move on to the next one is important. It is important. And so, Eric, what's the brag there? Is the brag that you're learning to let go and move on? I want to brag from you, Eric, so throw it in the box, because I know it's so exactly. So what? Not your new favorite phrase. So what? You have bad time. Welcome to being a trader. So where's the brag? See if you can give me a brag there, Eric. I know you have one down deep inside, even if it's not pleasant. Anybody else here that has a brag that wants to just share how and where you right now are proud of yourself. Good. Moving on. That's a perfect brag, Eric, because what that means is that now you have unhooked yourself from the mistake you've made, and you're going to be able to potentially open up your eyes in a way that helps you not make that mistake again. The thing is, guys, when we start to go into judgment, we inevitably are going into a contraction, right? Just think about it. When we make a mistake, everything starts to shrink. When we see that we've made a mistake, our breath changes, our ability to focus changes. We start to shrink, physically shrink, never mind emotionally shrink, never mind start to kind of get tight physically, right? This is what happens when we go into judgment. We start to protect ourselves from that inner critic, from that inner Kremlin who's making us wrong, beating us up with its words and its judgment. When you're in a state of contraction, when you aren't breathing properly, when everything is tight, you are not in a position to be able to actually see the way out. That's why it's so important for us to be able to ultimately get to this place where we can let go of the judgments and get curious. If you instead get curious, then you're going to potentially have an expansion, a place instead of a contraction, a place of openness where you step into a field and you can start to see the landscape fresh and new. That is huge. Eric is saying the somatics after a bad trade help. Absolutely, because what's happening is you're letting your body feel the feeling. And this is, going back to my 5 practices, right? What are my 5 practices? First practice, self-responsibility. Second practice is self and other empathy. Third practice is emotional non-resistance. Why? Because emotional non-resistance is something that I think every trader has to get really good at. It's surfing the inner volatility that you feel emotionally. There's no trader who is ever going to not have emotions. But the key is you guys have to develop the stomach, the grit to be able to surf those emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones, especially the hard to be with ones. Because if you don't feel all the way through whatever has gotten kicked up for you, guess what happens? They stay stuck in your body. And you think about all the decades anybody has lived, all the difficult emotions that perhaps somebody hasn't felt, those are going to stay lying dormant in our physical body until we do discharge. This is why it's so important to understand how to feel your feelings, because they need to be dispersed. And this work that I speak to in it's my 3rd practice in Transforming Wall Street is informed by a lot of different teachers, but 2 in particular, I'm going to do a shout out now, is Raphael Kushner, whose book is The One Thing Holding You Back. He is been my personal Yoda on the journey of these past 20 years. He taught me how to go into my body, which was not a place that I was comfortable going. Part of what helped me navigate my crazy childhood was being up here, being up in my intellect, numbing myself out from what I felt, numbing myself out from being with the hard to be with feelings. And it took time, guys. Like, it didn't happen overnight. I'm still learning how to practice it. Ultimately, what that taught me was it taught me how to process hard to be with feelings, how to not be triggered by them, but to be able to withstand the momentum. And after you learn this in the beginning, after you start to do this, what you discover is all of those hard to be with feelings that you think are just impossible to be with, that you could never endure them. You discover it isn't as bad as you imagined it to be. Just like that beautiful quote, right? There's nothing to fear but fear itself. There's nothing to fear but that discomfort itself, because we all have been taught, trained, or our inner gremlin is telling us, oh, you won't be able to handle it. Not true. You actually have what it takes to be with it. All right, so Eric said something here before I go to you, Javier. Let me just see what Eric said. So Eric is also working on getting comfortable being uncomfortable, where it's a lifetime of work, Eric. It's not like, we're ever going to be one and done, but learning how to build up that muscle to deal with the discomfort, emotional discomfort, it's the most life-changing, technique I've learned, and it allowed me to process years and years worth of stuff that I had not previously felt. All right. So Javier says, this is very interesting that George Soros said he knew it was time to leave a trade when he had a pain in the back. I have heard that too. He treated viscerally. Yes, he does. I bet he still does. I think this hugely successful traders implicitly know this stuff. I'm 100% with you, Javier. And if you look at Soros and even what happened with him with that, the biggest trade that he ever made, during the wasn't that during the '08 crisis, guys? No, it was before that. It was I think it was the British pound. It was the when the UK government was in the middle of deciding whether they were going to go with euro or not. And this was before '08, I believe. And if anybody remembers, you can put it in the chat box. But that is absolutely true. And that is why I feel like there's just so much more. And this is part of why I love Jason Apollo Boss's interview in my book, right? The Bank of England, the ECB. That's right. It was the ECB thing. And the Bank of England. That's part of why I love Jason's commentary in my book, Jason Apollo Boss, because he talks about in his book, I'm actually going to grab that book off my shelf because I have it here at my desk. He actually himself, this is Jason's picture, guys. I don't know if you can see that. This is his book, The Intuitive Investor. And Jason, this is what it says on the back of his book. Javier, I think you might appreciate this. Shane, maybe it was it Russian's currency after the Cold War? That's way back. I mean, maybe he made money on that too, Soros. But the big one was the ECB thing, the Bank of England. That was the almost bankrupted the Bank of England, basically. And that was a little bit more recently. But look, the man's older man. He's been around for a long time, so I wouldn't be surprised. He has other amazing, but that I think was like one of the biggest trades, ever. Okay, so this is what I want to say, Javier. You do have this book, and I'm so glad. This is such a great book, guys. I know it says investor, but for the traders that are here, trust me, you want to read this book. It will completely rejigger your relationship to your intuition. And this is not a woo-woo book, guys. This is a dense book. This is a book that's going to ask a lot of you, because he is, he's a genius, Jason. So here's the thing. It speaks to, in October of 2004, Jason had an epiphany that there was going to be a near collapse on Wall Street, and that he should retire to exclusively pursue a spiritual practice. He basically got that hit in his meditation. He retired at 35. And he was the co-portfolio manager of the Davis Appreciation Income Fund, one of the nation's largest money management firms, and among the largest shareholders for several familiar brands. During his tenure, he bested the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, and the DJIA by staggering percentages. Lipper Analytical Services named the Davis Appreciation and Income Fund a Lipper leader and was ranked #1 in the investment category. What Jason introduces to all of us about his journey, about his meditation practice, about his ability to connect in, is all in complete harmony with the intellect. And he also was on my podcast. So if you haven't watched that conversation, guys, I believe I've actually had Jason on twice. And I'm with you, Javier. I am glad it's not a bestseller too. I mean, for Jason's sake, I wish it was a bestseller, but I agree with you. It takes years to digest. It's just packed with such incredible genius perspective. He's just one of a kind. And I was so fortunate to get introduced to him when I was putting my book together, because he just really encapsulates the power of somebody bringing a brilliant intellectual mind and a brilliant spiritual practice together. And to me, that is like, there's no ceiling on what's possible when those two things are married. Yeah, I'm glad it's not a bestseller because it gives us an edge. Absolutely, Javier. Absolutely. Well done. That makes total sense. I knew what you meant, but I didn't say that. All right, so the room keeps growing. I don't know. Is it because it's Thursdays, guys? What's going on? Why do we have so many people here? I'm so happy to see everybody here. If anybody has any questions, but I also don't see any questions coming through. So please, if you have a question you want me to take on, if there's something you want coaching on, please let me know now so I can, maybe the questions aren't coming through. One of the messages that I'm getting is that maybe everybody isn't able to, ask their questions through their platform. Maybe that's an issue. I'm not sure if everybody's coming in from different channels. If you're let me say this, guys, I'm not seeing questions. So if you are putting your questions in, it could be that the platform you're putting those questions in isn't relaying them to me, because obviously I keep asking for questions. It means I don't see any. So ultimately, there's a couple of things that I want you guys to walk away with. If I don't get any questions, we're coming to the top of the hour. I do these almost every Wednesday because we have such huge turnout today. It's making me have to contemplate if instead of Wednesdays, I should consider Thursdays. If anybody who is here has an opinion on that or is a regular, because we have a nice regular community who comes most weeks, please weigh in now, speak your piece. The other thing I want you guys to hopefully walk away with is this concept of so what? How do you take that concept, that neutralizing concept, into your trading, into the mistakes that you make, into the places that you see you could improve upon, into making stupid mistakes, into being a fool, into screwing up? I want you to now start to use this new phrase that I'm introducing to you here as so what? Because if you want to up-level your game, you're going to have to get your hands dirty. You're going to have to go out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. And that means there's more chance at making a mistake. That means there's more chance of you screwing up. But so what? Like, what's the alternative, guys? You don't up level. You don't put yourself out there. Like, I could have listened to all of those inner critics at the time and not written my book because I didn't know what I was doing. But not knowing what I was doing actually didn't really get in my way, as long as I said, so what? All right, Tina, I'm glad to hear you're flexible. I hear that Eric is saying Thursday works too. All right, I have to take this under advisement and reassess whether Thursdays, is a better evening. I'm glad that it works for both of you guys. All right, and what else do I want to leave you guys with? I want to also leave you with this Mackie Jackson book, Uncertain. I hope that you guys will not be as afraid of uncertainty as Perhaps some of you are now. I'd love for you to all come to our X Space tomorrow at 3:20 Eastern on X, where you can talk to Maggie. She even speaks about a trading incident. I can't remember the details because I just have so many stories written down for the questions for her, but there's just so much evidence of how stepping into uncertainty with more comfort can absolutely change how our cognitive ability works, and just the experience that we have personally for ourselves and the journey of life. If you don't try, you won't do. Action is the driver of change. True that, for sure. The heart of what this is in service to, guys, every week is to hopefully bring you guys some tools and bring you guys the ability to not be as hard on yourself. Like, even if you want transformation, even if you want to become a better trader, it's got to come from a place of you wanting to up-level yourself. If you're coming in with this sense of I have to fix myself, or I'm broken, or something's wrong with me, or you make yourself feel like garbage because you're human, that is going to put you at a disadvantage. Whenever you want to change something, whenever you want to up-level yourself, you want to approach from a place of curiosity and a place of neutrality. That and those two are the foundations any kind of change is built upon. There's a particular trader positioning index that I offer, and that assessment facilitates our being able to see what's under the hood of a trader, right? What is the mindset like? What is the headspace like of the trader? What's the judgment like of a trader? All of that is so important. And I'm putting the link here if you guys are interested in checking that out. It is an assessment, and it's 2 sessions with me to give you the results of this assessment. Now, here's the thing about that assessment. What we see is that whatever that work side is, like our relationship to strategic thought, perhaps a person's ability to be open-minded, a person's ability to follow directions, a person's ability to come from a place of non-judgment. Like, all of these things are measured. It's a very granular assessment. I've never seen one like it. I was introduced to it now almost 4 years ago. Absolutely blew me away. I've never been a big fan of assessments, to be honest, but this one is very different. Eric, I'll check out your question just in 1 second. But here's the thing. Whatever that work side looks like, guys, guess what it sits upon? The self side. And I can't tell you how often I will see in very successful traders this incredible strong work side and compromised self side. Now, here's the thing. If the self side, our self-esteem, our confidence, our relationship to stress, our ability to take care of ourselves, self-care, engage in it, if all of those are in the gutter, it is going to pull down all the strengths that you may have on your work side. It can't but do that. It's like a big hole in the gas tank of you, because anything that we do professionally, anything that we do in our work is going to sit on the foundation of the relationship we have with ourselves. And if that is compromised, guys, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you are going to have your foot on the brake while your foot is on the gas pedal. It's not a good way to operate. So if you haven't done any work on yourself, if you haven't looked under the hood of how you operate, what the self-talk is, what the relationship you have to money, to loss, the fear of missing out that you struggle with. Like, if you haven't taken a hard look at all this, guys, what the hell? This stuff is driving all that you do. I don't care how much screen time you have. I don't care how many strategies and how much time you spend with different gurus. At the end of the day, the relationship you have with yourself is going to be invisibly driving so much of how you operate. I recommend you find out more about it. And even if you're not going to come into coaching, there are just too many books out there today where you can do this exploration on your own. And this is a critical piece of any trader's development. Know thyself. That is going to be a game changer for everybody. All right. Does embracing uncertainty help those who are fearful? I would say 100% yes, because the fear that anybody goes through is usually predicated on the unknown, right? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? What part of what I feel my relationship to uncertainty has shifted by reading Maggie's book is it's shown me that actually sometimes uncertainty is the birthplace of a completely new option or idea. It's incredibly profound. It blew me away. I never shut my Slack off. So sorry, guys. That's my Slack in the background. All right. And the second question here, I think so, but it's a loaded question with a few things to explore. I would agree with you, but I do believe that embracing uncertainty, and this is the subtitle to her book, The Wisdom and Wonder of Being Unsure. I do think our culture today has a tendency, I'm just going to shut the Slack off. I do think our culture today has a tendency to advocate and or insist upon being definitive. I think we do have a tendency culturally in multiple different places to kind of make people feel bad or ashamed if they're not sure what to do, or if they're feeling they're in this like in-between place, like a hallway, as if that room is better or being in this room is better. And like the hallway somehow means, somehow you're not, moving quick enough or something. Yeah, contrarians for the win. And absolutely true, the birthplace of gremlins too. But I feel like probably some of the gremlins, Eric, are arguing against uncertainty, making us feel ashamed of our uncertainty, making us feel like judging our uncertainty. And one of the things in the middle of me reading that book that happened for me was I had a business decision that I had to make, and I had two trusted advisors give me, somewhat of different advice, but they both had great advice. And I was really wrestling between these two particular perspectives the day I had to go into this conversation. And I remember like being upset with myself the night before this conversation, thinking, I have to know which one I'm going to stick with. I have to pick one. I have to be certain, right? That was my kind of self-talk. And then I was like, wait a minute. What if I apply what I just learned from Maggie Jackson's book, Uncertain? And what if I let myself be unsure? What if I have these two great suggestions? What if I take them into this conversation I have today and I let myself intuitively follow the advice in the moment that it comes, push comes to shove, feels is the best one? And that is what I did. And it was exactly the perfect way to go, because it allowed me to be in a place of ambiguity. And when the time came, and this is why it's so important to like have this comfort, I was able to trust myself to know which way to go in that moment, which of the different opinions that I got was the right one in the moment. And that is about self-trust, guys. And that you have to develop as a trader, guys. You have to have self-trust. If you don't have self-trust, you're going to pay a huge price. If you don't trust yourself, if you don't have that kind of relationship with yourself, I don't know, guys, it's going to be a hard road to craft for yourselves. All right. So yes, Javier, you can ask a out of field left question. I get some interesting ones here, so just try to keep it PG, please. That's all I ask. I've gotten a couple that were so not. Yeah, but I'm sure, Javier, you could ask a left. I don't know what the question will be. I don't know if I'm going to answer it, but I'm happy you can certainly ask it. I have some caffeine here. I had to drive. You guys know I have to get a Diet Coke once in a while, even though I know it's not healthy for me. All right. So Javier says I've been trading BITX and I have made more money in the last month than my trading than I ever have. I also got stopped out the other day. What do you think about Bitcoin? Javier, I have to, and he says to him, it's the most spiritual currency because it seems to be ossified energy. Do you think it's a bubble? I have to say, Javier, I don't actually have an opinion that I'd be comfortable putting here because I'm not an investor or trader, right? I'm a coach for them. But here's what I would like to say about what you've asked me. One of the books that had a profound impact on my relationship to money is a book called Money is Love. This is a book by Barbara Wilder. I believe our relationship to any currency, including Bitcoin, is going to be informed by our personal relationship to currency, to money. And part of what I found so profound about Barbara's book is that she advocates that it's our relationship to money, our relationship to wealth, our relationship to abundance, our relationship to scarcity that is going to inform whatever kind of currency we use, including a barter exchange. That is a form of currency. So the key is, and congratulations, I'm very happy you've done so well. I think there is a lot of time to go before any of us know anything. Nobody knows, right, Javier? Nobody knows. This we thought was going to happen. That we thought was going to happen. Like, nobody knows. So you have to tune into yourself. You have to tune into your risk comfort. You have to tune into the guidance that you lean upon. But ultimately, what I do feel is that any kind of currency is going to potentially have our imprint upon it, our relationship to it, our perspective upon it. And that is part of what Barbara is talking about in the book, is that if we pour our love into the money that we use, into how we invest, into how we spend it, then we are doing a sort of energetic blood transfusion of the money, right? Whatever the money is, because it's filled with our energy. And this is talked about a lot as well in Lynn Twist's book, The Soul of Money. She talks about this story where she had was working for the nonprofit, the Hunger Project, which eradicates, hunger in the globe. And it was a gentleman, I believe he was in Chicago, who had some bad press, and she was going to pick up a check from him. He was going to make a big donation to her nonprofit, and it was, a huge check. And she got to his office, and had this bad press, and ultimately that was the motive behind his donation, was to get some good press, right? Because he had just had some bad press. So she said, as he slid his check across the desk to her, and she took it, she felt all of his kind of bad juju, right? His inappropriate stuff that had come out in the paper. She felt the darkness, if you will, of his money. And, she was young. She was, not in a position of authority in this nonprofit she worked for at the time. She was just like a fundraiser, early fundraiser, new fundraiser. She puts the check in her, briefcase and makes her way to her next event, which is in New York City in the basement of a church, up in Harlem. And she's at this event trying, from this like penthouse with this like crazy donation check. And she finds herself now like in an extremely different, church basement where it's like, mom and pops coming to hear about the Hunger Project. And she has a woman who was a housekeeper who comes up to her with $50 in like ones and fives and says, I want to make this donation to the Hunger Project. And Lynn talks about how she took this hardworking older woman's $50 and put that in her briefcase with that man's, check. And she felt in that moment that that woman's $50 would go further than that guy's big fat check because of the love that that woman had given that with, as opposed to the guy who had given it just to kind of, clear his name. So I guess she talked to whoever she needed to at the organization, and it was determined that they were going to send that man his check back. And they did. And she wrote him a letter explaining why, and basically put at the end of this letter, when you want to donate with yourself, like not your organization to clean up the brand, like when you believe in our mission, when you are ready to give your money, not because you're trying to clean up some bad press, but because you actually believe in what we're up to, think it matters, and that's where you're coming from, we'll be happy to take your donation, but that is what we would request you come from with your any donation. And if not, here's your check back, right? I can't believe they did that. And that's not the end of the story. So the best part is that years later, Lynn gets a letter from this guy. And this guy says, nobody ever refused to take my money before. And it was so shocking that you forced me to take a really hard look at myself. And it took me a long time to unpack all that and to have to really take a hard look at what was going on for me. But now I can see how and where I was coming from. And I would like to offer you a check from my personal account. And it was like for so much more than what that original check was. And that was just this like incredible vignette, incredible story of the power of the energy, right? Of where he was coming from. So there's so much more good stuff in that book, including Lynn Twist having this experience with Mother Teresa and judging these rich patrons of her. Just so much. It's just an incredible book, and it will really rejigger your relationship to money. I think, Barbara's book, for sure. I speak about Barbara. I got to interview Barbara for my book. So Money is Love is Barbara Wilder's book. The Soul of Money is Lynn Twist's book. So many other books out there on money, guys. I've read, I don't know how many books on money, you name it. I've probably read it. I've really enjoyed Jared Dillian's book. His is a new book, just came out a month or two ago called No Worries, which is also a whole different kind of contrarian look at money. So yeah, all right. So Eric says money can fulfill needs, wants, lead to greed, fear, scarcity. If solely driven by money alone, success in trading won't be as fulfilling as you think. I would agree. I don't think in anything, no matter what you do, it will never be as not fulfilling. If, we all have a relationship to money, guys. We inherit it from the parents that raised us. We inherit it from the class we come from, poor, middle class, upper class. everybody has got a relationship to money. The question is, have you looked at what your relationship to money is? Have you unpacked what your relationship to money is? Are you living by default some of your experiences of money that aren't actually yours, but just what you saw was always done? All right, Javier says, wow, it's amazing that through all the cultures we have this. In the Islamic tradition, there is the concept of baraka, which means blessing. Some money or assets have it, some do not. I could totally see that. Good, Shane. I'm glad you found this to be a good, cool conversation tonight. I'm so glad you're here. What about you, Shane? Are you good with Thursday night? Shane is a regular here too, folks. So I'm asking some of my regulars what they think about Thursday. We have 126 people in the room, Shane. What the heck, huh? How cool is that? All right. So we've talked about uncertainty tonight. We've talked about money and our relationship to money, or relationship to Bitcoin, or relationship to all different forms of currency. Okay, good to know, Shane. Good to know. Thursday works for you. What else have we talked about? We talked about the concept of so what, and what happens when you start to use that as a response to foolish mistakes that you make, and stumbles and or fumbles. Like, what happens if you start instead to say, so what? Just get over it. Like, let it go. Like, what are you going to hold on to it for? Just to feel worse about yourself? Like, what good does that do, guys? Like, truly, if you want to create change for yourself, you're going to have to get over looking like a fool. And this is something I'm very lucky. My sister, she's just amazing at it. She's the queen of being able to say, so what? She teaches me every day how whatever happens, one can just, exactly, that's right, Tina, you help me remember the hashtags are creating. How many hashtags do we have now? We have the so what hashtag. That's it. I can't even remember some other hashtags. We create a lot of hashtags here, guys. The attachment to detachment. That's it, Eric. Awesome. All right, well, thanks so much to all the regulars and to all the new people that were here. I didn't do much coaching because I didn't see any questions in the chat box, except for a couple. But ultimately, these are about me trying to be a contribution to the whole community. Please come back. I'll try to figure out if I can do these on Thursdays, maybe then instead of Wednesdays, because it seems like maybe that is a better day. I don't know, but we'll see. I'll see what I can do and go from there. I think I'm going to close it down. You're welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody. And please check out the Wall Street Coach. Also, and we haven't put this up yet, but I just dropped a podcast, I think it was this morning or yesterday, about Anchor. And it's a more personal podcast than I've ever done before, where I really kind of, speak about an experience I had with destroying a piece of furniture with a chainsaw. So it's not a typical conversation for me to share with you guys, but I felt it was important because I really want you guys to get comfortable with being a feeler of your feelings, and especially anger. There's a lot of times where I find that people don't know how to express anger in a healthy way. And having a smash shack, crafting a smash shack experience for yourself is one of the ways you can do that. And I just share a little bit about how I did it and how transformative it was for me. And I hope that you guys will consider it for yourself. All right. Thank you, Javier. Glad it was a great conversation. Gracias. And mahalo to you too, Eric. I think you guys are awesome. I believe in you. I want you guys to just go get it. Whatever it is we say here in Hawaii, imua. It means to go for it. So imua to all of you guys. And hui ho until